Tape has just released Arc 9 Chapter 28, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. Highly recommend you check out my Arc 9 Chapter 27 summary. Anyways, let's begin. It was without a doubt a passage from a battle spoken in legend. The twin swords of the sword demon clashed with the raging claws of the divine dragon. Dragons were at the apex of all living creatures. And on top of that, this was the divine dragon. Wilhelm was near felt, and as a result, the divine dragon could not use its true potential lest it caught Felt in the crossfire. So Wilhelm stepped away from Felt. There was no point in the battle if the divine dragon couldn't use their full potential. So Wilhelm walked closer to death. The sword demon was someone who lived on the battlefield. His soul stained by blood, something that only is obtained by victory. He knew that losing meant death. However, despite knowing that losing would mean death, there was nothing worthwhile about having a stolen victory. He must win using pure swordsmanship. There was no time for detours. If he wanted to reach the peak of swordsmanship, he must continue to keep his soul steeped in flames. Sword and claws clashed, with a claw being cut off. Wilhelm strikes the dragon's chest. The scales are harder based on the total mana a dragon possesses. Furthermore, the older the dragon, the harder the scales. So Volcanica's scales were harder than diamonds. The steel sword he wielded, Trias, forged by the same smith who made the Astria sword, clashed against the scales and did not shatter. Even if the dragon was a shell of its former self, it still wielded cataclysmic power. The power granted onto it by Odd Lagna, the authority to reshape the world at will, to overwrite reality with favourable outcomes, like projecting a film onto the world. The dragon scales repelled the sword demon's slashes hundreds of times over. The dragon tail lashed out. Wilhelm dodged and then ran along the tail, clashing with Volcanica before being blocked. They would then clash again and again. The winds raged as the dragon wings spread like blades. The dragon tail hit the sword demon, launching him across the city. Wilhelm went limp at the moment of impact to lessen the blow. 1 building, 2 buildings, 3 buildings. Wilhelm crashed into them before stabbing the ground with his sword. A beam of white light was launched at him. Wilhelm stood up and sliced the dragon breath, which created a small hole that he was able to slip through. He then jumped upwards to confront the dragon, which was flying in the air. The dragon tried to bite the sword demon, but the sword demon, now in Volcanica's mouth, used his swords to keep the dragon's mouth open. The dragon snapped its tongue, rupturing the sword demon's eardrums, before using its tongue to knock the sword demon out of Volcanica's mouth. Whilst the sword demon was in Volcanica's mouth, Volcanica flew high up above the capital, meaning that the sword demon was now falling back down from a great height. If he crashed like this, even the sword demon wouldn't be unscathed. That was the difference, of course, between a man who lived on the ground and a dragon. Even with Wilhelm falling, Volcanica charged a breath attack, aiming at the noble district of the capital. Wilhelm realized that someone had already ensured that the noble district was evacuated beforehand, meaning that there would be no other casualties. The dragon breath was released, and Wilhelm twisted midair and landed on a clock tower. This was one of the buildings that Wilhelm pierced through before he jumped into the sky before entering Volcanica's mouth. From atop the clock tower, Wilhelm prepares himself with a slash of beauty which cleaves the dragon breath in half. Wilhelm and Volcanica lock eyes. The cleaved breath destroys the whole district, leaving destruction around Wilhelm. The only building standing was the clock tower and the Bariel mansion. Wilhelm then leaps off the crumbling clock tower and once again clashes with Volcanica, bringing fear to all those that are alive. No, even the inanimate would feel fear. The scene changes. Do you like flowers? In a world of white, a woman asked him in a field of flowers, as Wilhelm fought a torrent of memories. It raced through him. Did you come to like flowers? She was a beloved woman. He fell in love at first sight. He didn't understand the feelings, so bottled them away. Yet their bond was never broken. To wield a sword to protect someone, I think that's a good thing. The burning hometown, a beautiful flash of the blade that saved Wilhelm's life. The woman loved by the sword gave him a reason to fight. Anger was all Wilhelm felt, so he cut down that anger and embodied the sword, eventually standing before her and making that woman his own. Do you love me? No. Did he make her his own? Or was it he who was claimed? The answer remains unknown. He was happy meeting Teresia. That was his greatest blessing. Until he lost her. Teresia's death was a tragedy. Wilhelm, consumed by grief, made many mistakes. He pursued her killer so that her death would not end in tragedy. He would never stop struggling in order to restore vibrancy to the world. Wilhelm pressed forward, coughing blood, towards the regrets that he must still cut down. A cloudy sky, empty gravestone, mourners crying. What he remembered that day was regret. The young child, too little to understand. Unable to be with both mother and father. He offered words of kindness, and Wilhelm rejected them. It's alright, grandfather. When she died, grandmother wasn't the sword saint, so the sword saint hasn't lost. Please stop. But the sword saint must not lose. That's what father told me. I'm begging you, just stop. So even if you grieve, the Astria family will be fine, grandfather. Not here, not now. Don't talk about this here. Words of powerless rejection, repeated over and over. Words of comfort from a child who had already chosen what to believe. And then, I'm the next sword saint. I received the title before grandmother passed away. Enough! What do you want me to say? That it's your fault? That Teresia, your grandmother, died? Don't make me say such a thing. In his memory, only Wilhelm and the child remained. Wilhelm cut down his immature younger self. Words that aren't said will never meet their recipient, even if the emotions are conveyed. Likewise, words that are said cannot be taken back. In this faded world, Wilhelm cannot remember the face of that child, Reinhard. Those words, once spoken, aren't always heard by just one person. I heard you blamed him at Mum's funeral, and now you want to see Reinhard? A father who can't even tell right from wrong has no right to apologize to him. He said he took away her blessing and let her die. I'll prove it wrong. I'll prove it. It's not my dad, it's me. It's what I have to do. These were all sentences stated by Heinkel. Wilhelm's cruel words to Reinhard had spread throughout the city. Not only that, knowledge that the sword saint blessing can be transferred became known. Heinkel never let Reinhard meet Wilhelm again, and Reinhard, obeying his father, avoided Wilhelm. Their relationship was severed. Their connection would be reformed at Pristella, but once again another tragedy occurred which would sever that relationship a second time. Wilhelm refuses to let Teresia's life end in tragedy, so doing what he does best, he will use his sword. Reinhard is currently the sword saint, and since he has that title, Wilhelm can never connect with him. That's why Wilhelm Trias must strip him of the title of sword saint. The district was a battlefield. The clashing of legends of sword and dragon resonated across the city. This clash may not be witnessed again for another 100 or so years, and yet this is the second time Wilhelm has clashed with a dragon. The sword demon was at a disadvantage. One hit and he would be dead, whereas he couldn't pierce the dragon's scales. Eventually, he would tire out. At least that's what reason would say. But who could imagine the sword demon losing? The one who beat the sword saint Teresia in a sword fight. He denied reality and did the impossible. The sword saint is the hope of the kingdom. So when the sword saint was defeated, he assumed people would lose hope. However, they simply looked towards the sword demon for hope. With this in mind, Wilhelm knew he could use his sword to cut through any problem. The battle was at a standstill, a stalemate. The sword demon and the dragon took more dangerous attacks in order to outdo each other. So no one could predict the outcome of these transcendent beings. In the middle of the battlefield, the dragon and the demon locked eyes. The sword demon was spilling blood everywhere. The sword demon then looked down at his abdomen. He had been stabbed. He knew the sword well. It was called Astria, and its current wielder, Heinkel, Wilhelm mutters. Wilhelm knew he couldn't turn around, or else the sword would slice his torso in half. From behind, a voice choked with tears states that his way won't bring back Luana, and that he has told him before, he has to be the one to do this, not him. Wilhelm remembered the days in the past, when he used to spar with Heinkel. Heinkel would cry and Teresia would tell him off. Then they would continue sparring. Wilhelm always knew that when the boy cried, he could never win. And so, that's how the legend ended, with a stab in the back. And the chapter ends. So we have my boy Heinkel here right at the end, stabbing Wilhelm in the back. So Wilhelm's probably out of the fight, unless he becomes a sword saint next chapter, and he actually gets it from Reinhard, which I don't think, but there's a lot of talk about Wilhelm stripping the title from Reinhard. But either way, I thought it was a good chapter. I know a lot of people don't like Heinkel, but this chapter shows that like Wilhelm was like an asshole essentially to Reinhard, and Heinkel actually says to Wilhelm, look, like, you treated Reinhard badly, you stay away from Reinhard, you're like bullying Reinhard. And in that flashback, Heinkel says 3 sentences, and the final one is, I have to do it, I'm the one that needs to do it. And he once again says this right at the end when he stabs Wilhelm. He says, I have to do it, I have to be the one to do it. So I think it's quite nice. I know people don't like Heinkel. Heinkel is one of the best characters in the series, and even Tappei said if Subaru was not the main character, Heinkel would be the main character.